Hello and welcome to the Collecting Heroes podcast. I'm your host JD, the collector of collectors, and this is the podcast where I interview pop culture collectors from around the world. And today I'm very happy to be talking about this collection and about this fandom with my next guest, sort of going to a place where my podcast has never gone before. So to speak. I'd like to introduce my next guest from LA. Her name is Liz, and she is a Star Trek collector. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. As I said, it's probably one of the worst segues I've done as well. So I apologize to anyone listening. And also to anyone listening, if you do actually hear any outside noise, there is construction happening across the corner from my place. So unfortunately, there may be some excess noise. So I do apologize to anyone. But otherwise, let's get into the show. As I said, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk about this because most people know that listening to the podcast that I'm a Batman fan, and I just discussed that, and you can see in the background. But what people don't know is that I guess not so secretly now, I'm also quite a bit of a Trekkie, or have been over the years as well. Very much a Trek fan. But for you, and this is where I always start with all my guests, you're a Star Trek collector, but you also say on your Instagram page that you are a lifelong fan. So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about where did your journey as a Star Trek fan start? How did you become a fan? Was it family that were already fans, or you as a child discovered it?
I was pretty young. I had an older brother who started watching TNG, and I just kind of would sneak in around the time it would come on and poke my head in and see what it was, and it caught my attention, and kind of from there it just evolved into like a love for the stories and the characters, and yeah, I just kind of followed it as the new iterations that would come in. I've been ever since.
So you started with the Next Generation.
Yeah, Next Gen was my first
Yeah,
love.
and was that as the episodes were coming out, or was it during like reruns?
During reruns.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in syndication already, so.
Now, obviously, we're pretty blessed in terms of how much Star Trek that we actually
Oh,
have
yes.
and watch. What was your journey with the different series behind that? Because obviously, you've got the Next Generation, which is 160 plus episodes, ran for
Mhm.
7 seasons, and then you've got the subsequent things that come up. Is there anyone that stands out particularly from you? Are you still a huge The Next Generation fan? Is that where your love lies? Or did you have another series that came out afterwards that sort of took your heart?
Well, Next Gen I watched up until its end run, and then as a young adult, I kind of didn't watch like the newer shows. It wasn't until like after college that I got into it again, and I started watching Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older, I decided to go back and watch every single episode of every show up to that point. So DS9, Enterprise again, TNG again from the beginning, and then
Yeah.
the last one I actually watched was Voyager. I hadn't seen Voyager. This was several years ago, and I just I was blown away. I love all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't even tell you like which is my favorite, but I mean TNG holds a special place in my heart. But but yeah, just like everything.
That was going to be
I
my next question, I guess. Do you have a favorite, like exactly,
yeah.
out of those ones that you've just watched? But I actually, for me, my favorite would have to be Voyager. I'm a huge Voyager fan, and Voyager was one of the ones that actually, that was where I came to love Star
Mm-hmm.
Trek, was watching that with a friend of mine who unfortunately passed away when we were young. He was 24. His name was Kevin, and when I was first living out of home, lived in the apartment next door to me, and we used to hang out. And I remember I was at his place one day, and he was watching an episode of Voyager, and so I just sort of sat down and with him and just watched it. Just bored doing something, nothing to do that day, and I was like, actually, this is kind of cool. I didn't mind this, and I'd always
Mm-hmm.
thought of it as the old the old series, like with Captain Kirk, the 1966 original series. I'd always thought it was, a bit nerdy, a bit geeky, and that was me. I was just coming out of my teenage years at this point, so I was like, this is actually kind of fun. I'll watch another episode with you, and then I watched another episode, and then another episode, and then next thing you know, I was hooked, completely hooked. And so yeah, Voyager's definitely my favorite series because it's got that that place in my heart that
Yeah.
watching it with Kevin as well, and having that attachment to him. So your brother, is he still a Star Trek fan? Is that something that?
Yeah, but he's more of a casual fan.
Yeah,
Actually, he's actually the one who I inherited his action figure collection when I was younger
nice.
because he was like, he's over it. It's like he's not a real Trekkie. I make fun of him sometimes. Like you're not a true Trekkie, no. But yeah, that's where I started. Actually, he gave me a lot of his stuff and his trading cards and the early figures. So
Okay.
that was the springboard,
Well, I mean, that's
basically.
a great segue because obviously I need to talk to you about your collection. This is a collecting podcast. So when was that roughly that you got the hand me down action figures and everything? So how long ago was that, and how long have you been collecting for
Um,
since?
I've that was probably like 20 years ago. Um, Probably been collecting now regularly about 15 years
Okay.
because it's just started with like a few little things that I kept. But I had a friend who was also a collector, and she had a lot of just a lot of really fun stuff. And her family were big Trekkies, and so that's where I got the bug. Was kind of to go out and start searching for things, but I didn't really get to do it until after college, and I was starting to make my own money, and I was able to go out,
Of
go
course,
toy hunting.
and I guess space, right? Like if you're going to college, like if you're depending
Exactly.
if you're living in a dorm or wherever you were at the time, you may not have had the space to have a collection.
Yeah, and moving a lot around, so I didn't have to pack a bunch of stuff. So it
Yeah.
wasn't until I made roots somewhere that I really started getting a lot. Yeah.
And is there something that stands out to you? I've noticed that you have a lot of the action figures. I think the Mego figures and things
Hmm.
as well. Is there something that stands out with action figures that when you see it, you're like, I have to have this as part of my collection?
Well, I'm a big packaging nerd. Like the early stuff, the early Mego, it's just really great packaging, really eye catching. So that's why I gravitate towards. But even the Playmates, the early Playmate stuff had a really cool packaging. The ships.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm like really that catches my eye first before anything. But I'm a big fan of like the TOS, aesthetic, that the colors and everything. I actually just
yeah.
recently on my trip, I went to the original set over in Ticonderoga, New York,
Oh yeah, I saw that
and it
on your
was
Instagram.
yeah. So that was amazing because the colors were just like you see them on television. It was
Yeah,
amazing. So I was just geeking out big time over there.
that's an amazing experience. Obviously, to be able to see that in person, I'm sure. I've always wanted when I was growing up. After I became a fan, I was like, oh, well, maybe one day I'll have like an office or something, and I might set it up to look like a captain's quarter or something like that. And I've sort of
Hmm.
abandoned that because now with the more of the Batman aesthetic and having the Batcave, it wouldn't really probably fit. And also, that was kind of a bit of a fantasy if I had a lot of money with, a large house. So you got to pick and choose your battles there, but I'd always loved that aesthetic and just the clean lines and
Yep.
exactly like you said, the colors, the
Hmm.
lightings, all of that from designs and even seeing them now on the new shows, how they vary from show to show, like the aesthetic and how it's changed and evolved as well. It's
Yeah.
really, really cool to see. Is there something in your collection that's a favorite item that stands out as well?
Um, I can't really pick a favorite, but I do like to kind of color coordinate my collection. I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah, I did see that actually.
It is actually it goes from like TOS to Discovery. It has a little section now, which is awesome. Then it goes into TNG, DS9, Voyager, and then I have like the film side from their TOS films.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of is like color coded sort of in a way, but it's also yeah, it's hard to figure like to think of something that but like Spock is my favorite character
Oh, cool.
uh, from yeah, probably Spock definitely. And so there's a lot of him everywhere. He touches all the bases on in my room. So
I was actually
anything
gonna,
he's
I was actually gonna say because I'd thought of a couple sort of rapid fire questions to maybe ask you later. I usually do a quiz sometimes with guests.
okay.
I thought about doing a quiz, but it's all right. I don't have a quiz for you today. But I had thought instead of a quiz, maybe doing something a little bit more rapid fire. But so I'll ask you one of the questions early now, and that was, who is your like? What's your favorite version of Spock? Like, who's your favorite actor to play Spock?
um, Definitely Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
And if you had to rank the others after that, where would you put them?
Oh gosh. Well,
Put you on the spot here.
I think Zachary Quinto, how do you pronounce his name?
Yeah, from the
He did a
movies.
great job. Yeah, from the Kelvinverse. I think he was great, and Ethan Peck is doing a fantastic job. Oh, I we still need to see a little bit more of him, but see how he develops it. But I think he's doing great. I think they've all been pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed. I was a bit uh, worried at first when they brought him in at Discovery. I'm like, how is he gonna stand up against
Yeah,
the other actors that have played it? But you're right. Ethan Peck has done a really fantastic job on Discovery.
yeah, he has. I'm really excited to see how he develops it.
And also, so you became a huge fan. Like, well, you started obviously as a child through the Next Generation. Your favorite character is Spock, who is from the original series. Do you have a favorite vehicle or ship?
Oh gosh, probably have to be the Diamond Select TOS Enterprise. It's pretty amazing. They really did a great job on that one.
Yeah.
It's got all the sound effects and it's just beautifully designed, and yeah, that one's up there
And is
definitely.
there a Grail item as far as ships that you would like to have in your collection as well?
um Ships, no, I don't think so, but like Grail item probably like the Migo, the 1970s Migo playset.
Oh,
Mission to Gamma.
is that the one that the playset of the I'm blanking on the word now.
The bridge.
The bridge, of course, yes. Is that what
I
you're talking
have
about?
that one.
Oh, you've
When
got
I
that one.
have that, yeah, that one. That one's definitely up there in the Holy Grail
So,
space in my shelf.
but there's a different playset.
Yeah, it's a different one. Yeah, pretty much trying to find as much of the early '70s Migos stuff as possible. That's my mission in life right now.
And when you are searching out, do you go through eBay? Do you have certain forums or other collectors that you speak to as well?
I like to do the footwork. I actually have like some favorite stores that I've found quite a lot of stuff in. They're either here in California, I travel, to Arizona in particular. They have great stores out there.
Nice.
Yeah, so I like to do the legwork and eBay, of course. But sometimes these smaller retailers have just these little pockets of goodies that come away with some really great stuff.
Which stores would you recommend for people if they're in those areas?
Well, in Arizona and Phoenix, there's the Collector's Warehouse, which is probably one of my favorites. And then there's here in LA, in Orange County, actually, there's a little shop called Kelly's Toy Store.
Okay.
And that one is a lot of fun. She has a lot of really cool, nostalgic Star Trek stuff and a lot of everything. She has so much stuff in this tiny little shop. So that one's a
And
great
so
one.
the owner is a bit of a Trekkie themselves as well.
I don't know about that, but they definitely have a lot of stuff and they know how to display it and how to, entice. That's for sure. I have come away spending quite a lot of money from that store. So, yeah.
That's really cool. I actually went to LA. I mentioned to you back in 2018, and there was I can't even remember the name of the place now, but it was Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank, And I was
Oh, Blast from the Past.
that's the one. That's the
Oh, I
one.
love
Yes.
that one too. That's a
Yeah.
great one.
So I
Yeah.
actually did go in there, and I remember they had a really cool section with a lot of Star Trek stuff that I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at in there. I didn't pick anything up,
Yeah.
but I just remember because I was only there because my partner, she actually had a couple of pin-up like dress manufacturers that were on that street, and so she
Mm-hmm.
wanted to specifically go there and buy these dresses because trying to import them to Australia would cost an arm and a leg. So she's like, "We're here. I'll just buy a few dresses and thousand or so dollars later and half a suitcase." She was very successful in her mission. But I was walking around while she was doing this, just exploring different places. I found a place. I think it was called Black Cat Comics. That was on that street, which was a little tiny. It was a newer store at the time, and yeah, and also Blast from the Past, which I went in
Mm-hmm.
and had a look around, and they had some fantastic stuff. I did pick up actually from that store. I did pick up a Matchbox set of Batmobiles. Uh,
Oh, awesome.
yeah, which was the Tumbler from the Dark Knight. So it was like a sort of like a limited edition Matchbox set, which I picked up as well, and had to try and get that home safely in the suitcase because it was also in the packaging.
Yeah.
So you've got these places that you search them out. Is there something that you've seen that you haven't picked up that you're like, I wish I'd gone and got that, and you went back and it was gone later?
Actually, that just happened recently, and I'm trying to remember what it was because I was really kicking myself. But yeah, no, that has happened a lot, and I I think by now I've learned my lesson that I should just bite the bullet and get it, even
Yeah.
even if it leaves me like eating, beans and rice for a few weeks. But but
As long as you
yeah,
can still eat, right? Like beans and rice is fine. As long as you can still eat, and as long as the kids can still eat, you're good.
yeah. Who needs food when you can get an awesome Star Trek collectible?
And what do your kids think? Because you mentioned you got children. What do your kids think of the collection? Do they watch Star Trek with you as well? Are they become little fans?
Uh well, they know the episodes, they know the shows because I watch them constantly, and they're even, "Oh, you're watching this one again?" No. But, they have their own collections, video games and, like, nostalgic. My oldest son, he's very nostalgic, so he collects a lot of, like, Tron and, Nintendo stuff, even though he's way, way too young to even know anything about that, but he's got an old soul, so
Oh, nice. Oh, I
they're
mean,
collectors in their own right.
I do love Tron. I do love Tron as well.
Yeah.
For
Mhm.
anyone who might not be sort of aware, well, obviously maybe aware of what Star Trek is, but maybe not as much of the fandom. A lot of people refer to fans as either Trekkies or Trekkers. Do you know what the difference is? But is there a difference between the two?
Honestly, I don't know, but from the time I started, you know, referring to myself as a fan, like a true fan, I've
Yeah,
just always called myself a Trekkie. I don't know if it has to do with the era that you started watching, but
yeah.
yeah, I wish I could answer that question. I really don't know.
Because I've always sort of wondered that. I'm sure if I could just Google it and find the answer, but yeah, I know I've heard people say Trekkers or Trekkies, and I
Yeah,
say
and
Trekkie as well. That's something I
yeah.
I
I'm
remember.
afraid to offend somebody. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
No, you don't need no. Nobody needs to be offended. At the end of the day, like they're all fans of the same thing. I'm sure, right?
Exactly,
Like it's
exactly.
probably just
Hmm.
same versions of the same thing. You said you've got your favorite character is Spock. Do you have a favorite captain?
Oh boy. Gosh, they're so great just in their for their own reasons. I mean, well, Picard was my first captain, but I love Cisco, and because he was just so commanding. I don't know, it
Yeah.
was so awesome. But now getting to know Janeway, and then now in the new iteration, seeing her again is so exciting. Seeing
Hmm.
her in Prodigy, and she's just so awesome. I can watch her like every day. She's amazing. Yeah, no, I can't really pick one. I wish I could. I wish I could,
And
but
and
I'd probably. I mean, even Kirk. It was campy when I was watching TOS for the first time years ago, but I love him too. I've grown to just love all of them so much. So
I guess that
yeah,
just speaks to how wonderful and how diverse. the different series and the different
Exactly.
iterations of Star Trek have been. So you have the different series. You've got the original series, as I mentioned, from 1966, and then that was cancelled after 3 seasons.
Hmm.
And then 20 years later, because the fandom was so big, like for this show that had been cancelled, you then have the next generation comes in the 80s, and then
Hmm.
during the 90s you have Deep Space Nine and Voyager, which we've discussed, and I absolutely love those series. And then all through the different series now up to Discovery and Strange New Worlds, even the Lower Decks. Have you been watching Lower Decks?
Oh yes, definitely. That
Uh,
is a riot. I love
yeah,
it.
absolutely. I love it. And I love because it doesn't take itself too serious. Like it's a comic series, or sorry, a cartoon series that essentially is just poking fun almost
Yeah.
at
Hmm.
some of the things.
It's but lovingly,
But
lovingly.
lovingly,
But
of course, yes, 100% lovingly, and I enjoy it so much because as someone who's watched so much Star Trek over the years, you get all the references. You're like, oh yeah, yeah.
exactly.
But they've
Yeah.
also, I think, set it up in a way that even someone who may not be, a lifelong or like a long term fan can still sort of pick up on a lot of the jokes and things, and as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, that makes it amazing. Such a great show.
Yeah, yeah. We also spoke about. You said you went and you looked at the exhibition recently, where you got to actually see in person
Hmm.
what it looked like almost to be on a ship.
Yeah.
Um, we mentioned earlier before we started recording about conventions, and you said that you'd been to a number of the San Diego Comic Cons as well. Do you
Hmm.
tend to, when you were going there, did you tend to meet up with a lot of other Star Trek fans, and did did you cosplay? Do you what was your sort of involvement when you were going to these conventions?
Well, honestly, I didn't really uh, go for fun like I'd wanted to. I would go for work. I would go. I had to work booths
Oh,
there, but
interesting.
yeah, I worked for a company called Her Universe, and they do a lot of like pop culture clothing, and so that was a lot of
I've
fun
seen
because
them.
I,
Yeah,
yeah, so I used to work there, and I was very immersed in that whole, the whole. But she did a lot of Star Wars, and that's okay, that's fine too. I love Star Wars too, but I was actually able to be a part of their 50th anniversary collection that they produced, which was awesome because I got to design like a lot of stuff for that. And then that was the year my last year at Comic Con, because I got a little bit of burnout. Comic Cons are very like overwhelming if you've never been to a convention. That's
yeah.
probably not the one you want to go to, or maybe it is if you want to just completely immerse yourself. But
I,
they're
I,
a lot of fun.
I'll just do the Cliff Notes version, like, for people who may not have listened to the podcast before. But anyone who knows the story that I had Comic Con tickets for 2020 and unfortunately wasn't able to go. So I look forward to being a part of that anarchy one day. But I've been a part of the versions here in Australia where they have uh, a touring show called Supernova, which is a convention that also gets like tens of thousands of people into it.
Oh,
Not
okay.
quite the same size, but I definitely I love that vibe and going and being around all the different fandoms. But that's really cool that you got to work it. Did that mean when you would go there, would you get there early and walk around to the booths and get to see things like without
Yeah.
the anarchy of all the crowds around you?
Yeah, and that was probably the best part of it. There's a lot of behind the scenes of everyone setting up and actually getting to breathe and walk slowly, before all the chaos, before they let the gates down. So that was fun. Good memories of
And do
those
you have any
conventions.
specific items that you've picked up at those Comic Cons as well that are special to you? Like the memories are special as well.
Um, no, because I didn't really have a lot of time for shopping. But I just loved seeing all the costumes. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a big cosplayer. I did cosplay to Ticonderoga for the set tour, which was fun because we had a photographer follow us around and take pictures of us as we were in all the rooms. But I'm kind of a like introvert, so being a cosplayer is not really my cup of tea. But
That's fair enough.
I love watching people. I love people watching at those cons. It's the best.
Well,
It's
I'm
really.
also have to be thankful then as a big introvert that you're here talking to me today. Like, you know, but
Uh,
obviously, you're here talking with someone who also loves Star Trek, and I'm sure, you don't need to feel introverted when you're talking about your lover in
No,
life, right?
it's probably the only time I can't get me to shut up. So
And you actually mentioned earlier that you'd never been to a Star Trek convention, but you were thinking about going to one in the future.
yeah, I'm really planning for May of next year, which will be Mission Seattle. But I mean, I would really love to go to Las Vegas because it's not too far from me. So hopefully, when things settle down, I'll be able to
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Well, that's actually, I was talking to my girlfriend about this the other day, and I said to her, um, I mentioned that in the early days, before I even really knew what San Diego Comic Con, or before it became as big as it has over the last decade or more, um, when I'd first gotten into Star Trek, that was the first convention I really had heard of, was that Las Vegas convention, and that was this big mecca for Star Trek fans to go there and gather, and
Yeah,
people cosplaying, and then they would have, all these different panels and signings and everything as well. And I'd always thought that I'd love to go and do that, and then eventually that turned into I would love to go to San Diego Comic Con because of all the different fandoms that I'm a part of, including Star Wars, like you mentioned as well. I'm a
yeah.
huge fan of that as well. It's funny actually when we thinking about that, how some people are either Star Wars or Star Trek, and I'm like, I don't know. I can't remember how the saying goes, but there's the El Taco girl when she says, "Why can't we have both?" I feel like that whenever anyone's like, "Oh, you have to be Star Trek or you have to be Star Wars fans." Like, no, there's like we live in the golden age of fandom, and like the geeks
Definitely.
have inherited the earth essentially, like, and pop culture is spread
Definitely,
out.
yes.
Um, so I think we're very very blessed in having that.
Hmm.
Is there another fandom that you have outside of Star Trek that you collect any items of?
I do actually. I collect a lot of Thor and
Oh, cool.
Loki figures and you know memorabilia. So that I haven't been able to put that together in like in a room, but yeah, I have a lot of that too. So hopefully someday I can display that.
I'm a big Lego fan myself. Did you see the Lego hammer, the Mjolnir
Yes,
hammer that they
yeah,
did?
I did. I just recently saw that. And it was really amazing. And if it wasn't for all the, I don't know if you're familiar with the XO6 figures that are coming out, the Star Trek ones.
No.
They're the 1/6 scale figures.
Okay.
They're very expensive. So if it wasn't for those, I would probably have Mjolnir right now. But I've been spending so much money on those XO6 figures because they're so awesome. Their sculpts are amazing.
I actually have on my phone, and maybe I'll have to send it to you later. I've saved a from another Lego page that I follow on Instagram. They actually had like these little micro builds. I love micro builds, and the miniature Lego builds. Uh, and they actually had like almost like a micro build of Mjolnir that you can
Oh
make.
wow.
It's like a little desk version that you can make, if you've got the pieces. So maybe I'll send that over to you,
Yeah,
and
show me.
then you can maybe get the pieces. There's a place called Bricklink where you can buy Lego. It's like market like eBay for Lego pieces, and you
Oh,
can
okay.
order the pieces and maybe make your own little smaller version for a fraction of the price.
Yeah, show that to me. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome.
I did. There was another question I actually had for you before we wrap up, and that is that you mentioned being a Niners center fielder. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
um, um, I'm a big baseball fan, so that's probably one of my favorite DS9 episodes when they go into the holodeck and play baseball. Um, Take me out to the holosuite. So
Yeah.
I just put that on there because I'm a huge baseball fan, and that one just makes my day every time I see that. And I always wanted to be part of that team. I want to be a Niner so bad.
Do you play baseball in your spare time at all?
I play catch and I go to batting cages, but I love watching it, and I'm a huge fan of like the New York Mets, and so um, yeah, I have the Niners jersey. Sometimes I wear it to the games, and people
Yeah.
are like, "What are you wearing?" That's not this team, but anyway, yeah. It's just for fun.
I love that. I love that crossover. And in fact, the holosuite is one of those items that I was thinking about because I was thinking about different things, and as I mentioned, I was going to do a bit of a rapid fire with you, but I've sort of asked you a couple of questions already. There was one of the questions that I had, and that was because we've had so many different parts of technology that have flip phones and tablets and laptops, all that sort of stuff that have sort of already appeared in the earlier versions of Star Trek, and now we have in reality. For me, the holosuite is one of those items that, if I could have one piece of tech from Star Trek in today, it would be a holosuite. Do you have an item of tech that, if you could make one thing a reality, what would it be?
Definitely the transporter.
The
I just want to be
transporter?
able, yeah, I just want to be wherever I want to be like
That's a
the
good
blink of an
answer,
eye.
actually. It's hard to. I know I say holosuite is one of the ones that I would choose, but I mean that's a damn good answer. And
uh,
obviously,
I mean, I mentioned to you I was so jet lagged that I never want to get on another airplane again if I could help it. But transporter would be really great right about now.
I I think the only thing is like trying to convince people to have their particles split apart and then reanimated into another place, right?
Yeah, get over it. Yeah. You want to get from A to B a lot quicker, just
Yeah,
get on that pad.
yeah. And if you could, and another quick, if you could visit anywhere in the Star Trek universe, where would you visit?
Ooh, gosh. I don't know. Maybe Vulcan, although it's probably hot there, so I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that before. I'll have to give that some thought.
And the last of my rapid fire questions, if you could be anything other than human from the Star Trek universe, what would you be?
Mm. Ooh, maybe an Andorian, cool blue skin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
That's silly.
Well, I've had a lot of fun talking about this. I absolutely love Star Trek, as I said, and it really holds a special place in my heart because, as I mentioned, my friend Kevin,
Mhm.
who's no longer with us, and I'd like to dedicate this episode to him because I know he would be loving me
Oh,
having this conversation with another Star Trek fan, and I'm going to get emotional, so I won't talk anymore about that.
that's
Um,
awesome.
and he actually to remember, like my friends that back there, I actually have an item here which I'm going to show to you, and I'll describe to people listening to the podcast. I have a Franklin Mint, and it's getting caught up in the cord from my microphone. Hang on a second. I have a Franklin Mint, and I think you may even have
Oh
this item.
yeah.
But,
Mm-hmm.
but this is the Encounter at Farpoint Franklin Mint. What do you call it?
Diorama type
Diorama. That's
thing.
the one. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, which actually has the character Q and the Enterprise. And I love that Encounter at Farpoint. What a fantastic way to open up a series with the trial of the human race by an omnipotent
Mm-hmm.
being. But I have that and I actually purchased this from back in the 90s when John Delancey actually came out and was touring Australia. And
Yeah,
when I purchased this, it was at the Franklin Mint store, and he was actually doing signings at the store. And so I've actually got uh, the certificate of authenticity for this actually signed by him as
that's
well.
awesome.
And
That's so awesome.
so that's actually takes pride of place in my collection. That's something I don't imagine myself getting rid of anytime soon.
Oh no, definitely not. Same.
But do you have actually? Well, before we wrap up, one last question: do you have anyone that you've met or any signings that you've been to for anyone from the Star Trek universe?
I haven't, and that's another reason why I'm really dying to go to a convention. So, and I just met, I had the opportunity to go to Star Trek Day here in LA, but that was happened to be the same week I was out of town, and I missed it. I
Oh,
would have been in the same room as Sir Patrick, but there'll be other opportunities. I'm sure. I'm definitely going to go to Seattle for a mission in Las Vegas next year for sure.
Is there one specific? I mean, most people may say William Shatner, but it could be someone else. Is there one specific person? If you could meet one of your Star Trek heroes in person, like as
Mm.
far as the actors go,
I'd probably really love to meet Brent Spiner or uh,
Data. That's right, Data. Is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Jonathan Frakes. Pretty much everyone from TNG. I'd love to meet Kate Mulgrew. I'd love to meet her for sure. But
Mm.
yeah, I'd be so happy. I probably would not even be able to speak if I saw them in person. I would say something embarrassing and then never leave my house again. So
Oh, they say never meet your heroes, right? But I think
right.
with some of these people, they're probably really nice in person. I'm sure as
Yeah,
well.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Well, look, I'm going to wrap this up. There is so much more we could talk about with Star Trek. Through the years, the way that it's affected pop culture, the way that it affected science fiction, the way it's affected science reality, like we were talking about. Things like the flip phone and etc. etc.
Mhm.
Um, the way it even just spoke to different cultures of people, people of color having representing them on TV, the original series having the first interracial kiss on television, all that, it's really just, it's a massive part of pop culture zeitgeist. So I had to have a Star Trek collector on. So I'm thankful it could be you, and thank you for spending the time talking to me.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
Before I let you go, I always have people plug their socials so that people can go and find your collection, as well as if they were to come through the podcast. So where can they find you?
I'm at My Little Trekkieverse, TrekkieVerse on Instagram.
Perfect. Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely say go and have a look at Liz's collection. It's a great collection, color coded, as we said as well. But I love it, actually. I love also that you use a lot of glass cabinetry to display, which I think is really nice as well. I'm so used to, even myself, having Billy bookcases. I think IKEA is probably the the
The
bookshelf
collector's
collectors. Yeah,
resource.
exactly. It's good to see something that's not in a Billy bookcase. So yeah, I love it. Thank you for being on the show, and
Thank you.
I guess with that, I'll say live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Thank you.
If you liked the episode, please consider following or subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also join me on Instagram at Collecting Heroes, where you can see photos of the collections of the people that I'm talking to, as well as some of my own.